Good morning. Hello and happy Saturday to all of you joining on the live. Welcome. I'm so excited to be a part of your Saturday morning. My name is Dr. Melissa Gallagher. For all of you new joining, welcome. For my regulars following us, I just want to thank you for joining our channel here and being a part of our Natural Health News live show. For all of you who are regular viewers, you're going to be really excited about this. And also for any new viewers, I welcome you to be a part of our community. Hit that join, subscribe, follow, give me a thumbs up. Today, we're going to talk about a new study that came out that details actually the flow chart. It sounds crazy, but system-oriented flow chart to COVID. So we're going to go over just kind of the process of symptoms and how they progress. This is a very large study, 55,000 COVID cases, and this is very much prominent. So we're going to address each of those symptoms in our show. The first part of our show is news. So if you care less about news, you fast forward to halfway. Show notes on the replay will actually have a timestamp. So just click on the timestamp and it'll take you to the start of our live show, or start of the information about how to deal with COVID-related symptoms from a natural perspective, obviously. So welcome all of you. It's one of these things, COVID is just continuing to grow. And so I just want to globally let you know that here in the US, we have a 10% drop in testing. We're testing fewer people, and we still have testing challenges with the equipment, the testing materials, the different elements to maintain high testing levels. And we're seeing some shuttering of COVID testing locations. So that's problematic. And we're seeing the heavily hit communities, the people of color, actually having less testing facilities that they have access to. So just put that out there. But the big news is that the world hit 21 million. It's really crazy. 21 million cases. It's 21.1 million already. They're almost at 22. So it's just this exponential growth is just really accumulative. And the US is at 5.3 million cases. I want to highlight some things worldwide because we do have a large world international following. And Latin America alone comprises 6 million of the 21 million cases. And I want to share with you an example. For instance, in Peru, there's a family where we see individuals. Oh, we've got my delivery. Yay. Sorry, you guys, I did an Instacart this morning because I ran out of some breakfast items. We see families, especially multi-generational families in Latin America. In one household, there's 17 family members living in the house. And for instance, this one situation, 17 family members all in one house. The entire household's been affected by COVID. 5 have died already. 4 of the family members are hospitalized. And that is one of multiple reasons why we're seeing Latin America be so heavily hit. I also want to share with you that Mexico City has had the movie theaters closed for 4 months. They are now reopening. They are the 4th largest movie consuming movie market in the world. And they are going to be having movie theaters at 30% capacity. We're not sure how that's going to play out. It didn't really play out too well here in Georgia, but we'll see in Mexico City. Now, I also want to highlight Shenzhen. That's the city where I had mentioned yesterday that they had identified frozen foods contaminated with COVID-19 particles that had been imported into China from Brazil. That community also has been hit hard. And I say hit hard, it's all relative. In China right now, they have lower caseloads. They are seeing grocery stores and grocery store workers being impacted by the exposure. And so they actually have a total of 6 cases in Shenzhen. And because of this grocery chain has closed 21 stores and they're doing a deep cleaning. Now just think about that. Like, would we expect to see a Publix do that here in the States, or a Kroger, or any of the major chains? I'm just not sure if we would see that. We've seen, meat packing industries continue full force, and, that's very challenging. So I just, like to highlight what's going on outside of the US for all of us who are citizens of the states to just kind of have perspective of how everybody else is doing it. I do want to highlight before we kick off some of the news about the different cities or states. The CDC has posted yesterday, in alignment with clinical research that's been out for over 2 months now, that there is a window of immunity that's about 3 months. That's kind of the max immunity. So they're putting that out there just so people have an understanding that just because you may have had it doesn't mean that, or you may have had asymptomatic or symptomatic COVID, doesn't mean you're protected. So that is really critical because a lot of people might feel like, okay, I've recovered, I'm fine, and they're out there, they get reinfected. And there are different strains, as I highlighted yesterday. New Zealand's doing research to find out the source of their small outbreak and what type of strain. So different countries are showcasing different kind of strain mutations, DNA, the genetics of the virus are different. And that can play a role here in the US. There may be some differences between the different coasts and middle states. So let's talk a little bit about the US. Yesterday, we hit over 170,000, it's just crazy. I can't believe I'm saying this, 170,000 total COVID fatalities. And we posted almost literally just one less, 899 new fatalities. So almost 900 people yesterday died from COVID across our 50 states, and the territories are included in that. California surpassed 600,000. They have 601,000 new cases, 601,000 total positive cases. And they posted almost 8,000 new cases. They had a big day yesterday. They had 188 people die of COVID. And I do want to highlight in California, they have actually closed a private school of over 600 kids. It's a K through 12 private school. It's in Redley, California, called Emmanuel Schools. The school was not mandating social distancing. They weren't requiring masks, and they were not adhering to the state school-oriented guidelines. So the governor ordered them to shut down for 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure there's going to be a battle in California over that. Florida and Texas both are approaching 10,000 deaths each, which is insane. Florida has had a total of 563,000 positive cases. Yesterday, their numbers are still lower because some of the testing sites have not reopened. So they're at 6,100 new cases. They had 222 Floridians die of COVID yesterday. So in total, Florida has 9,276 fatalities, and Texas has 520,000 total cases. They posted 7,000 new cases, and they had a big day, the biggest day. It's 313. So out of all the states yesterday, Texas had the most fatalities, which means the obituary pages are going to be numerous in those Texas cities. And Texas has 9,602 fatalities. So let's talk about Georgia. This is where I live now. I'm a Floridian. We moved up here 3 years ago in June of 2017. And I'm in a suburb just north of Atlanta. My office is technically in Atlanta, but the northern part of Atlanta. So we are in a suburb. We literally have deer that were trying to eat my garden yesterday, but my dogs defended our garden. And we're in the foothills. And so Georgia is up there. We are the 5th largest state in terms of positive case or total positive cases. We have over 231,000 cases. And I've reported the schools are reopened. Schools open. You know, we have communicated our choices here. We're doing a virtual. We're doing some in-person with a learning coach, and then I'm organizing a whole bunch of virtual types of programs. Speaking of, I'm very proud of my little man. He had a karate belt promotion last week, and we are going to, after this wraps, we're going to go pick up his belt, obviously social distancing, but we're trying to make it a little bit of a to-do, and we're going to get him a donut after. But, you know, this is kind of the way it's working for a lot of families. But in my county specifically, Cherokee County, we have over 1,200 students and staff currently in a quarantine status. One particular high school is closed down right now. This is literally the high school like a few miles away. They have 14 positive cases and 15 pending right now. And I do want to mention this. I had some viewer, I think you might be a regular viewer, call me out and say, you don't know your numbers in Georgia. That's not accurate. Well, I'm going to share with you how I get my numbers, friends, because I am completely transparent and focused on facts, data, science, and numbers. So I'm just going to share with you, we have in our county, we have posted, it breaks down the high schools, and if there's a positive case, teacher or student, and then how many are quarantined because of that, student-wise and staff quarantine. So I just want to call the person who commented. Sorry, gets me a little peeved for questioning my data. But the reality is school districts are now being transparent. And thank God our county has posted this on their website. And it's literally www.CherokeeK12.net. And this is an excellent way for all of us here who live here to identify. They've got even the dates, August 3rd through 9th. They've got the next week, August 10th through 16th. And they've identified which school, what grade, is it a student or teacher? So I am factually backed with my data. So I just want to highlight that. That's how I know what's going on in my county. And then we also have state numbers. In other counties, Gwinnett County, Cobb County, they're also doing this. And I also want to highlight that we have a Georgia House representative in our state Congress who has set up a whistleblower email for any student, teacher, or school staff member, as well as any parent who has concerns about their school or the district, principal, whoever is manning and trying to adhere to these operations and social distancing and the COVID requirements. If they want to express that, they can email a state representative, and that there's a whole process that takes place to investigate and to identify how can we protect our students, our faculty, our staff, our administrative bodies in our schools, because we have a really serious situation here. And Cherokee County, we're a huge county, and we're one of multiple suburbs of Atlanta. And this is just the beginning of the iceberg. So the CDC is based here in Atlanta. They're really, they're calling a red alert here statewide, that things are going to get worse and that Georgia might actually be moving up into the Florida, Texas territory in terms of cases. So I just want to put that out there for any of you. I will make sure I post a link down below, but it's definitely, if you are concerned, and I've had a lot of you message me, and I want to validate those concerns. You have every right to feel concerned about this situation with schools. If you are working in them, you are providing services to students in schools, you are a parent, you're a faculty, staff member, bus driver, check to see if your district is like ours, where they've got an online, basically an online report, and it's constantly being updated about notifications. So you could Google your county, so it could like Cherokee County School District COVID-19, and we have it listed as COVID-19 notifications. But that might also give you a better snapshot of what all is going on in your school. You can also place a call to your school board in the area and find out if they have, check out their website, but find out if they have a clearinghouse where they're listing that. But this is really critical. If I am a parent, and let's say my child goes to Holly Springs Elementary School, and they're in 3rd grade. Okay, so that's right here. There is a student in 3rd grade who tested positive. 9 kids are quarantined, and 1 staff member, probably the teacher, are in quarantine. So you can check that and see, because some districts, they might not have all the policies in place that highlight the communication methods. Highlighted like Florida, there was this kind of unclear methodology or approach or timing to communicating to staff members if they had a quarantine situation or a positive test. So this might also be a way for you to not have to wait if your local news picks it up and not have to check out social media. I will say that our social media, we have a moms group in our city. They have, they're really good. So a lot of parents are already posting, that their kids in quarantine at home. But just FYI, that information is there. And, it's as accurate as it's being reported. And that is something for here, schools are taking it seriously. And I think there's also still that whole liability. So I had a little pain. Yes, Gabriel and I did a nature stamping art class yesterday evening. And we collected all sorts of things and painted pine cones and rocks. And so I have that paint. It's literally all over my hands. That stuff never comes off. Okay, so that's just in my county. We're freaking out a little bit in terms of just how expansive that is. And it just continues to solidify our really minimal outbound contact. Now, I do want to highlight, I have a viewer. I don't remember your name, but I know you're in Mississippi. And you are a teacher, your husband's a teacher. So I want to highlight, there is a community college where 10% of the community college's population is in quarantine. Mississippi is an epicenter. It's called Northeast Mississippi Community College. They have a total of 3,300 students and 334 are out in quarantine. Indiana started early school. I think they started first week of August, some I think in early, late July. They have 500 students in quarantine. And that will continue to rise as we see schools beginning. Now, the other thing I want to highlight, Hawaii has, the governor is considering a stay-at-home order for the island of Oahu, and they're looking at possibly delaying tourism because they posted consecutively over 350 cases in the last 2 days. So they're definitely concerned about the COVID-19 coming through travel onto the islands. So that is something that's kind of interesting. I also want to highlight something that I love it. I'm going to try and figure out how I can post it to my Instagram stories. But the National Institutes of Health director pulled out his guitar and he wrote a song about COVID-19, and it's brilliant. So his name's Dr. Francis Collins, and he's a lovely gentleman. I've always enjoyed hearing from him on all different types of health concerns. And so his song is really cute. I think he had his wife playing the piano or something, but do check that out. NIH director, I think he posted it on Twitter. But I'm trying to figure out how to get it over there. Okay, so the other thing that really today's topic, and this might be a little bit of a shorter show, but today's topic I really want to highlight research that just posted Thursday evening from Frontiers in Public Health, and this is modeling the onset of symptoms of COVID-19. And it was a study organized by USC, so the University of Southern California, LA, and they also have some other entities involved that were part of the research study. But basically, what they wanted to do is they wanted to identify the symptomology and the pattern of symptoms, if they could identify if there were discernible symptoms that were very classic and traditional, so that people could kind of identify, do I have a cold or do I have COVID-19? Because that's a big question, especially as we enter cold and flu season. So I want to share with you, you guys know I love my flow charts. So this is really fascinating. They actually flow chart the heck out of symptoms. So all these little squares are symptoms, but this is what they've put together as far as the flow chart of symptoms. So these are the most common. If you catch COVID and you're symptomatic, it begins with a fever. then you move to a cough, and then you move to muscle pain, then nausea, vomiting, and then the latter part is diarrhea, so the gastrointestinal. And it's very interesting because they have different flowcharts. Like some folks that checked into the hospital, they might identify, they had fever, cough, nausea. They had fever, and then they had fever, nausea, and vomiting. And then they may have had, that might have continued, and then they have diarrhea. Or some have a cough, and they have cough and nausea, and then the cough and diarrhea. Then others have nausea first, and then they have fever and diarrhea. So they looked at all the different possibilities. And when you get into, probabilities and possibilities, there's a lot. But what they identified is they've even broken down the symptomology of severe cases. Those are the ones who end up getting hospitalized on oxygen, maybe they're on ventilation, and then non-severe. And so there's a little bit of some differences in terms of the flow charting, but not too different. I mean, it is almost the same, just with folks who get admitted, both non-severe and severe. Diarrhea is part of it. So dehydration is part of it. So it's very fascinating, this whole kind of process. But this is what they ultimately, this is the core main, this is the core main symptomology. So you go from no symptoms to fever, then you have fever and a cough, and then you have the fever, cough, sore throat, and then headache and fatigue, and then fever, cough, sore throat, the headache, the fatigue, and then you get nauseous. And then the last is you add diarrhea to it. So it's almost the progression of how COVID starts attacking the ACE2 receptors and how it starts ping-ponging as it's multiplying in the body and it starts moving. And so you see this progression, the latter part being gastrointestinal. So it's very interesting. They also drew some other comparisons. So they listed what are the most common patterns in flu, what are the most common patterns in MERS and SARS. And some of the core differences here is that there's headache and sore throat and fatigue. It's most similar to the SARS, more so than anything else, just in terms of the progression. So you're going to have the fever first, the fever, then cough, and then fever, cough, sore throat, headache. So you start to see, fevers, the whole body's immune system starting to wake up. Then the cough, respiratory. You're starting to see it. It's moved from the sinus cavity. Now it's getting into the lungs, and you're seeing the lung changes, the lung scarring. Then the sore throat starts to happen, and then neuro-COVID, the headaches. So it starts to ping pong through different body systems and ultimately gets all the way down to gastrointestinal. So you have all of those, and it's just this progression. So this is really fascinating in terms of also ways for individuals, doctors, clinicians to be able to identify if somebody's coming in. Also, I've read more information about school nurses. So school nurses are often the front line at the schools. And there's a big article that basically, if your child says they have a headache, which ordinarily would be like minor, they'd send them back to class. Nope, those kids are going to the parents are getting called and they're going home. They're going to be put in, whatever isolation room, because the headache is very much a part of this whole process. So it's going to be a big factor in terms of screening when it comes to you going into urgent care or your doctor's office. It might also be a part of any of the pre-appointment setting. If they ask, have you had any, sore throat? Have you had any fever, headache, diarrhea? So those might be things that if you're trying to set an appointment, they might actually be measures to minimize you coming in and possibly spreading that. So that's just really something I wanted to highlight. It just came out this week, and I want to highlight some of the things that you can do or take that are impactful. So let me just write down my timestamp here. So we're at 24:48. So today's video topic is how can you address the very symptomatic, the progression of the symptoms of COVID. And as you are addressing each of the symptoms, how can you lower or mitigate the severity of those symptoms? So I've put together a list, and for all of you watching on the live, it's in the description box on the replay. You can check that out as well. And one of the things that I think is really critical is obviously with this ending up being a gastrointestinal experience where folks have diarrhea, it really becomes critical that you're, hydrating well, you're drinking water, drinking coconut water throughout the whole thing. Even headache, there might be elements where there is neuro-COVID, but it's not uncommon for folks with the fever to get dehydrated, and even dehydration could be headache oriented. So it could very well be that headache might be the beginning of neuro-COVID, or it might be just a symptom of the dehydration from the long elevated fevers. And a lot of times the fevers are lasting days. So it's not just like 2 days, you have a fever, you break it, you move on. People are having 101, 102 fevers for 10 days. And it's constant, like it just doesn't break. And so when your body temperature elevates 2, 3, 4 degrees, you are burning through more hydration, and you actually need to drink more water than normal. And so that's number one, is really focus in on your hydration level. So that's number one for all of you watching at home and trying to figure out, okay, how do I get prepared for COVID? And if I show some of these symptoms, what do I do? So I love to, look at natural ways to reduce the symptoms. And one of the herbals that I've talked a lot about here on the live shows, that is a very good immune balancer, immune regulator, is an herb called astragalus. And astragalus is an amazing powerhouse of an herb that will help your body respond appropriately. It won't rev up your immunity. It won't trigger autoimmunity or trigger that inflammatory symptom or system imbalance that ends up. And ultimately, what we're probably going to be seeing is some classification of COVID severe COVID as some inflammatory disorder, because we start to see ultimately all these inflammatory related system failures or dysfunctions from the virus. We've already labeled that for the children. They have the multi-inflammatory syndrome in children, but COVID is like that. And with astragalus, if you already have any type of autoimmunity, you already have that immune kind of tendency, like your immune system's kind of pattern where, if it gets exposed, it might just kind of go haywire. Well, haywire. Astragalus will balance that. That's one of the reasons I love that. So astragalus is my number one in terms of what can you take to address some of these symptoms. The other thing that's really critical immune-wise is going to be adding some lymphatic motivator. One of the things that we see with any type of viral infection is some lymphatic involvement. Lymphatic congestion is part of it. And if you, especially for many of my patients and folks that watch my channel, lymphedema and lymphatic disorders are how you came to know who I am and work with me. So if you have any underlying edema, lymphedema, swelling, inflammation, inflammatory disorders, autoimmunity, gut imbalances, lymph stem, a homeopathic lymph motivator is going to be critical. That also helps clear out toxins. It helps clear out cellular debris from the immune battle you experience, and will also help your lungs. It helps lymph drainage and detoxification of your lungs, your kidneys, your brain. We have a lymphatic system in our brain. At some point, I want to do a whole video on that because it's fascinating. So those are going to be critical elements. The other thing that I like to recommend, and I don't know if I listed it down below, but vitamin D3 is shown, we know clinically that these moderate to severe cases, all of the patients show low vitamin D3 levels. And if you're curious about vitamin D3 levels and you are like us, kind of minimizing your exposure, maybe you don't want to go to your physician or do a blood draw. I have kits that you can order online through my website, and you do like a little diabetic pinprick and put little blood spots on a little test paper, and we analyze that in the lab and can get you those levels. But any level that's under 85 for vitamin D, you are in some deficient state. So you want to be optimized, especially with COVID. So even during COVID, upping your D levels will help enhance your natural immune process. And ultimately, there's nothing right now therapeutically or pharmaceutically oriented and even naturally oriented that can cure. There's no cure for COVID, but what we can do is we can balance the symptoms. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today. Now, the other thing, there are some homeopathics that will help your body deal with certain viruses. Right now, I haven't seen any homeopathics that are addressing COVID specific. Those probably will come down the pike as we get those formulated in the next year or so. But definitely viral immune stimulator. It's by the brand that makes lymph stem. It's called Professional Formulas. They seriously are one of my favorite homeopathic manufacturers. That is all they do. They're homeopathy liquid tinctures, and literally you're just grabbing about a dropper, and this is how much comes out of a dropper. Grabbing that, putting that under your tongue, holding for 30 seconds. You might be doing that 3 times a day, but they have the viral immune stimulator that I absolutely adore. So that's fantastic. Now, when it comes to like the fever and cough, some of the things that I love, again, are in the homeopathic world. Homeopathy can be very beneficial when pharmacology it either fails the individual or we don't have any type of pharmaceuticals that address it. So a lot of OTC type of supplementation, homeopathy is great. And so these are the 2 that I absolutely adore. I love Cold Calm and I love Sambucol. And I think I have the tabs, and even Umka is another brand. But basically the cold and flu kind of relief, that's what you want to aim at. And they end up addressing, now runny nose is not a part of this, but it's definitely part of the respiratory component. But the sore throat, the fever, chills, the any type of nasal, bronchial congestion, these are powerful. And Sambucol actually will have the homeopathic version of elderberry. And so it's not elderberry in its plant-based form, it's in its homeopathic form. So for a lot of folks that might be a little sensitive to elderberry, the homeopathic version might be a little bit of a better option. But even, the ingredients, they have at least 10 or 12 different homeopathics. They've got the one that I really love is they have a homeopathic called Pulsatilla. And that is a homeopathic that addresses the loss of smell and taste. And with COVID, that is a very, very common symptom. And it can help minimize that the nerve bulb that gets inflamed and attacked by COVID. So that is helpful in the event that you're drinking, your normal teas or juices, coffee, you're eating, and you're like, I can't taste anything. Like, what am I drinking? That's a sign too of COVID. And while they didn't identify that in the modeling, there are some paragraphs to that point, but that definitely is part of what happens. So addressing that homeopathically can be beneficial. Now, some folks do experience some sinus, and so there are some sinus-related homeopathics like Umka Sinus, and even the Boron has a whole line like Calm. So they have Cold Calm, they have Allergy Calm, they've got Sinus Calm. That's what I take right now during the sinus season. And I actually took that last night with a few other things, and it helps clear out some of the allergies I experience within my sinuses. One of the other newer kind of supplements that I think can be helpful is Zarbee's has a chew. They have it's called Zarbee's Sinus Respiratory Chew. And there are these 2 little pink tabs, and they actually have an herbal blend in it that actually can help the bronchial lung respiratory pathways. So it's about sinus, but it's also, upper respiratory and lower respiratory relief. And I really like that. I feel like that's a really good one to address some of those, the coughing symptoms. Now, the other thing that I do recommend, your good old Ricola. This has a really good herbal. There are a lot of good herbals in here, and I want to kind of tell you what's in here. So it has menthol, but it has elder, horehound, hyssop, lemon balm, linden flower, mallow, peppermint, sage, thyme, wild thyme. And these can be really good for addressing some of that dry cough. And if you've watched a lot of my shows, I actually talk about some of the symptoms are what they call like a barking cough. And so, a lot of times you go, but the barking cough is like, it's this kind of back guttural cough. That is part of the viral invasion causing scarring in the bronchial passageways. So it's a deeper kind of cough. And when people cough, they end up scarring. So the more you cough, the more you're scarring, the more damage that's happening to those pathways. And so we have mucosal lining that gets inflamed. We see that in the lungs. There's on CT scans, there's gray, kind of weird, kind of cloudy look to the lungs. And then you'll see these dots that are these blood clots. So, as far as the symptoms of coughing, if you can lower your coughing, people are having these coughing fits that last for an hour. If you can calm the cough, you can start to have the body repair some of the scarring and some of those imbalances that plague the body with COVID. Now, the other thing too is, over the counter, there's some Mucinexes that you can take. There are also, you can use like Zicam. I do like some of the homeopathic zinc, and these are like these little melts that you can take. I don't think I have these linked, but I'll post them. Anytime you're doing any type of zinc, whether it's the liquid multi-mineral, you want to make sure you have food in your stomach. If you take any type of zinc, any type of mineral blend that has zinc in it, and you're taking it on an empty stomach, it will cause you to have nausea or just feel kind of sick, kind of nauseous. And so that's something to be aware of, because sometimes how can you tell if you're having a symptom because you took a supplement on an empty stomach? Oh, Daisy wants to come say hi. Come here, Daisy. You want to say hi to everybody? Oh, here comes Daisy. Say hi, everybody. So Daisy was sleeping upstairs. She ran upstairs and left me this morning, right? Yes, while I worked and everybody slept. Say hi, Daisy. You're such a good girl. She's such a good girl. Her and Mina saved my garden yesterday, right? Right. Okay, so let me continue on. One of the other things that is going to be critical when folks experience a lot of times these fevers and the nausea and the coughing, it keeps people up at night. And I actually recommend, here, get down, good girl. I actually recommend a product from another functional medicine doctor. It's called Rem Sleep. And I recommend this because it's so fantastic for balancing the different assorted reasons, especially in a COVID case where you can't sleep. So, the cortisol is imbalanced because people aren't sleeping well. So it addresses that with hops and magnolia bark. And then it also has 4 elements in it that help to address some of the heat of the body. And then it has amino acids that are very calming. So there's nerve calming, there's central nerve system calming. And then it also addresses the neurotransmitters that need to be balanced. So 5-HTP is part of it. That's a precursor to serotonin. It is L-tryptophan, GABA, and just a little pinch of melatonin. Melatonin, when it's added to some of these, it's way more balanced than it might be elsewhere. And so I want to recommend that. And I don't know if I posted that on here. It might be in the description box. If it isn't, I'll make sure I put that on there. So it's called Rem Sleep. So those are some of my recommendations. There's obviously a whole bunch of other things that you can do, but I definitely think it's critical. Hydration, number one, it limits the degree and extreme of the headaches, the also physical exhaustion. When you are experiencing high fevers and you're dehydrated, your muscles are going to cramp. So that's part of some of the muscle pains and muscle aches. So you want to make sure you're hydrating well. You know, coconut water is natural Pedialyte. So having coconut water, good clean water. I love my Berkey filtration system. So definitely consider, you know, cleaner water when you're hydrating. And then also good juices. So, you know, a good juice to hydrate with is a pineapple juice. I love that because it's anti-inflammatory. The bromelain will actually help reduce some of the inflammation. And then also teas. So ginger tea, lemon, you know, cut your lemon and actually boil the ginger. So cut your ginger root and your lemon, boil it all together, the rind included. Some of the magic of the rind is the white stuff in the middle. But that's a good way. And you can add some local honey and that'll coat your throat. But those are things that are multifaceted liquids that can help hydrate your body, lower inflammation. So you want to hydrate, but you want it to go even more. So, you know, water is great, but can you have a compound that also is anti-inflammatory? Ginger is an anti-mucosal. So when we're dealing with not just mucus here, but also mucus in the esophagus, the stomach, the lungs, also digestively, ginger will calm nausea. It can actually help balance some of the microbiota in the gut. And so that becomes really critical. Now, as far as diarrhea, this is the one thing where, you know, the way our body process is, you know, there's a part of that whole process the body's trying to get that out. You know, like if you swallow the wrong way and you start coughing because you've got water down the wrong pipe, you know, I always say that with Gabriel, is it down the wrong pipe? You're coughing to expel that. So some of the diarrhea is part of our natural detox process. I don't always recommend things to stop the diarrhea, but I definitely do recommend things to minimize the impact of the diarrhea. So that's where the hydration becomes really critical. And then the other thing is reach for more fiber-dense foods. So an inulin fiber or like a chicory root powder, you know, inulin powder, chicory root tea, marshmallow tea. There are some really good teas that are digestive and they're calming, but also probiotic rich foods. So kimchi, miso soup is great. Kettle and Fire, actually, I think I have a coupon code for them. Kettle and Fire has this amazing miso soup. They also have a new one. It's a ginger faux. It has ginger and I believe there's a little turmeric in there. And that's a great like bone broth. And I have to highlight that too. Bone broths, friends, holy cow. If you are really, really dehydrated, you've got the headaches, the chills and everything, the bone broth is going to give you amino acids, which again, we see that in the Rem sleep. That's really helpful for balancing sleep, but also supports the body. One of the things longer term that we're finding out as we're seeing longer term cases, this virus is triggering and turns into chronic fatigue syndrome. So if you can support your body with all the right nutrients during this phase of exposure and symptoms, it helps mitigate some of the extent of the chronic fatigue. And we just don't know enough right now how many of those cases are turning that way. We don't know how all the different facets of the way the virus works, but we are seeing chronic fatigue syndrome as a byproduct. And I know, having had Epstein-Barr in a really severe case in my early 20s, you know, my efforts really minimize the severity of the chronic fatigue. And, you know, that for sure, I know I was green juicing, I was drinking I made my own bone broths. I was doing all these things that were very supportive of my nutrients. So making sure you're getting nutrient dense foods, warm foods are going to be helpful, and lots of juices. So if you can, pineapple juice, you know, when you're dealing with this, most folks are not functioning like they normally do, where they're like, oh, I'm going to clean my greens and I'm going to do my juice. So, you know, sometimes it might be, you know, making sure you have those items in your pantry. I actually just got 2 weeks ago, I went to Trader Joe's and I stocked up on some of their juices. So I actually have juices that are in glass canisters that have a little bit of a longer shelf life. Like they have, oh my gosh, I love it. It's a carrot ginger turmeric juice. Oh, it's orange. It's like flaming orange. And when I drink a lot of it, I actually get a little tan from the beta carotene. That's why people think I'm always in the sun, is the carrots. But you can actually, stock that and shelve that. You can stock up on your bone broths, and coconut water. Those are all really good kind of non-perishable goods that you can have in your pantry in the event you need it. Then you're not in a dire state where you're just drinking water. So you're actually proactive, being preventative. So I check out the description box. I'll add some more things for you guys to check out. But definitely, if you need, some of these items or feel inclined to support my channel, my Full Script store, you can find a lot there, where I have all of the homeopathics and the vitamin D3. Like, this is my dose, and it's Zahler, Zahler. This is a 50K IU. They have 20, they have 25, 15, 10K. They have all different ranges, which is great. So literally, like, when I want my power punch of vitamin D, this is how tiny this is. I love this. Look how tiny that is. Oh, and all my cells are getting vitamin D, which, in this critical state, vitamin D is essential. Essential. It's a powerhouse when it comes to COVID. We already know, we have a lot of research on its potency in terms of the immune balance that it provides. And it's very, the fact that we see so many cases of moderate and severe cases being in a deficient state is very telling when it comes to why we need to be taking this. So good morning, Ims, Mona, Teach Emerson, good morning. And Donna has organic beef broth. So comment, let me know. I'm going to look at your comments, but I hope this was helpful. I find this really fascinating. I keep saying, as we have more time, we are going to have more and better articulation, research and data about all aspects of COVID and how do we equip ourselves to address this. So, for instance, going back to my little Cherokee County list, this is a case, like, if you're a parent and you're like, oh my gosh, my school, third grade or kindergarten, 11th, 9th, if you find that there is an outbreak in your school, those would be things you'd want to have on hand also for your children. So, I actually am looking at a project I'm working on to address some of the kids-oriented health and wellness aspects, because I know all of you are adults. Some of you have children, grandchildren, or children in your lives. And not everybody wants to hear what kids can take. So I'm trying to work on a way to deliver that to you. But, the same thing that we do for ourselves, we should definitely be doing for our children. And I have a ton of stuff that I have Gabriel taking on the daily. Right now, a big part of what I have him taking, especially now school's back, I have him taking a lot of amino acids for mental focus. I also am targeting the stress. So herbals and homeopathics to deal with stress. Actually, this box, you guys can't see it on Instagram, but I got a delivery. I made a big order from Full Script. I'm probably my biggest customer. But I placed a huge order. And so I've got a whole bunch of stuff. And what's great is these little clickbacks. I can order like 10 or 15. But these are adult versions. But with kids, they have a lot of like little dissolvables. And he loves them because he's like, it's my medicine. And I can deliver so much into him through liquid, little tinctures and things like that. So there's a lot of great delivery methods. And I also have to give a shout out. One of the things that we know, and I have a lot of video content, I won't dig into it today, but the one of the most critical aspects that you can do is to help address your stress level. Stress is one of the most toxic chemicals in our body. It is the root of all illness and disease when we really scale it back. Cortisol hormone imbalances and the adrenal hormone imbalance will trigger not just thyroid imbalance and male and female reproductive imbalances, but it also will trigger gut imbalances, neurotransmitter imbalances, mood imbalances. So this is a golden find. I love this. I've found this during COVID. I'm a huge fan of Herb Farm. They tend to be my go-to for liquid herbals, particularly the individuals and the blends. But this is a spray, and you literally, I'll tell you what's in it. It has eleuthero, holy basil, ashwagandha, rhodiola, rose flower, and ginger. So the ginger is an anti-inflammatory, but they have the adaptogens in here, and you literally spray it on your tongue, in your mouth. I hold it. Now, herbals, it has a little bit of a zing, but it isn't overwhelming. Like, I don't always take a swig and, swallow. Like, it's totally fine. It's got a little ginger kick to it. But that is something that you can add to your regimen, and we should be addressing stress. So if you're feeling stressed out, actually this week I posted about how to stimulate and wake up your vagus nerve, and VAGUS, not VEGAS. So that vagus nerve, the right side, you can balance and massage. I share some techniques. So definitely do check that out. And we have Shauna Smith right now dealing with COVID symptoms. And yes, ginger, garlic, turmeric, lemon has helped. Also super weak, but yesterday I started my iron and it ate tons of iron-rich foods yesterday. Big help. Yes. So that is where, what you do is really critical to what you eat, what you do every day. And, sometimes we have to, I'm sure you're dealing with this, Shauna, you have to muster up that energy, and you're nourishing your body and you're feeding your body. We always say feed cold. Well, that becomes really critical. So even when you don't feel like it, you make sure you're drinking your bone broths and, having your teas. And one of the great things, like with ginger tea, you can make a vat of that, just boil a big pot, boil it for 10, 15 minutes. You can even add additional water. You can chill it. Like, I love it with the peach or pear tea. You can slice up fruit and you can drink that cold, or you can warm it up. So there's a lot of kind of flexibility there. Okay, Kimberly, good morning. She says, my coworker has COVID-19, and right now, she said the burning in her stomach for past 4 days is her worst symptom right now. It tops the fever and coughing right now. Yeah, and that is, people are really like, when they say the burning, the pain, people are describing this pain, and I'm still monitoring the Survivor Corp group on Facebook. And by the way, Kimberly and Shauna, if you haven't checked out, go over, when this wraps, go over to Facebook, and it's called their Survivor Corps. I'm going to just post Survivor. So check out the Facebook. So they're now at 95,000 followers, which is pretty amazing. But they have a lot of really, really impactful information. So I love it because I get messages from a lot of you, just like Kimberly and Shauna, who, may know somebody, or they're experiencing it themselves. And, they're like seeking validation, and not having gone through it myself. I always hate that. I want to have some relatability and authenticity. So I love to send folks to those groups because they're all suffering. And some, like, oh man, there's a picture that was posted this morning. I hate it. There's a 4-year-old on a respirator. And like these are numbers and data, these cases, but there will be kids here that end up in that situation. No doubt. It's just a matter of a few weeks. And as a parent, it's just heart-wrenching. And so it just becomes so much more real. And the group is very supportive. They have people that are talking about their mothers and fathers in their 80s and, asking for prayer and healing requests. I think it's such a great group. So definitely do check it out. Okay. So let's see. Ms. Mona, I only do COVID related questions. Fridays are our live Q&A. So definitely save that for next Friday. And Sheila, I can't repeat. You can do a replay. I've got to run. We have to go pick up Gabriel's karate belt. We're really excited. So, and he did his karate belt promotion virtually with his instructor. So we are going to don our protective gear, go pick up the belt. I might take a full social distancing photo of him. We're really trying to minimize how crazy this is. So, yeah, so check out Instagram. I'll post some photos there. And I've got to post a link. You guys are loving our above ground little pool we set up for Gabriel. I tell you what, that has been the most amazing $100 I've ever spent for my child. He loves it. He gets in there, he's swimming, and he's actually, we had him in swim lessons, and we have a pool in our neighborhood, but we're not doing our pool in our neighborhood. We're certainly not doing swim lessons. And he is just really doing well with it. So if you guys have any kids in your family, it's a blow up pool, and we have a little, like our little bike pump. We just blow the thing up, and we have water in it for 2 days. We drain it, clean it, and then add more water. It's awesome. So I'll post more links to the pool because we'll be in the pool later. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And definitely for all of you curious about the list, I've Got links down below. You can watch the replay. And for all of you, please give me a thumbs up. This really helps the algorithm. If you found this impactful, really love my content, please also hit that share button. Please, I'd love to have some virility on Facebook with my video. So that is apparently a new weighted algorithm with YouTube. So if you have an active Facebook community or you want to post it to a group, I really appreciate that. So thank you, thank you. And I hope you guys all have a great morning and a wonderful weekend. I am going to do family stuff and get my closet ready for a demo and new plumbing that we're installing. We're turning our master